Well, in one of the trending topics in the world in the last 4 days, the United Kingdom government has revealed plans to send asylum seekers to Rwanda for processing. The UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson said the decision was made to help fix the UK's broken asylum system, but critics have described it as a neo-colonial and inhumane plan designed to ostracize a section of the society. This move has been described as cruel and illegal by opposition politicians, human rights activists, and international legal experts. Rwanda is, however, happy with the arrangement and is willing to take in as many refugees as possible. The £120 million plan is facing a backlash, and the UK government is under pressure to sail or sink with it. Welcome to VSA. I'm Sulaiman Aledeh. Well, UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson said anyone, yes, anyone who's gotten into the UK irregularly since the 1st of January 2022 may be facing relocation to Rwanda. He said thousands of refugees are expected to be transferred to Rwanda in a move that could, according to him, save countless lives. While the British Prime Minister Johnson and the Home Secretary Priti Patel are convinced it's the appropriate move, the rest of the world is disagreeing. Taxpayers have also raised their voices as the move is dubbed unnecessary and expensive. Similar moves made by European countries in the past led to more refugees seeking an exit plan to other countries, treading dangerous paths and usually getting caught in attempts to immigrate illegally. The Rwanda government is comfortable with the idea, and according to unofficial reports making the rounds in the country, the orphans of the victims of genocides are being evacuated from their safe homes. What can we unpack from all of this? Joining me now is Calvin Dark. He's a global affairs analyst. He joins me from Washington, D.C. Good to see you, Calvin. As always, thanks for your time. What do you make of the British government's decision when this news first hit you?
I tell you, there is so much wrong with this policy. You know, let me just count some of the ways. I think one of the main arguments against this from an international law perspective is the UK is trying to shift off its responsibilities to take care of those who apply for asylum. That's one thing. Two is, you know, they haven't exactly said who would be eligible for this program. They have some guidelines, but I'm pretty sure they're probably going to look like me and you, which is just wrong in so many ways, particularly how it affects immigrants that are Black and brown already in the UK, the stigma that that's going to put on them if this were to go forward. Third, sending them 4,000 miles away to Rwanda, I think it's insulting a bit to the Rwandan people, because on the one hand, you've got the British government saying how, you know, this will help resettle them for a chance at life. And at the same time saying, we did this because this will deter people, saying if you try to get in here illegally, we'll send you to Rwanda. So that's wrong as well. And the fourth thing that I would say is the response from the Rwandan government was clear that this is a stunt from the Brits, because they said, you know, they prefer not to have refugees from the surrounding countries. So really, they're not prepared for more refugees. This is just a stunt, I think, for Boris Johnson to distract from some of his current woes, but also to strengthen their anti-immigrant line of politics without any real solutions.
You know, Calvin, listening to you, you know, what readily comes to mind, perhaps less painted, is it safe now to say, well, what the Rwandans or the Rwanda government doesn't understand is more or less saying that, look, if the refugees can have safe haven or heaven in the UK, then it looks more like hell, you know, for them, bringing them back to where they felt or they feel that it's pain all the way.
Yes, and you know, one of the things that, like I said, I think is just really difficult is that, you know, Rwanda has its own issues, particularly when it comes to freedom of expression and human rights. But I don't think that the UK can speak out of both sides of its mouth to talk about how this is going to be more humane, it's going to stop people smuggling, but at the same time, it has been criticizing Rwanda for human rights abuses, particularly restricting freedom of the press. And I don't think that what is a little over $100 million, I don't think that would suffice to take care of the burden for the migrants they received if this program did start. And that's not fair to the Rwandan people, nor is it fair to the British people that are paying it as well.
So the Rwandan government already accepted the decision. Now, are you saying that this doesn't actually hold any advantage for them as a country?
I think it holds a little bit of advantage in that the upfront money they got to prepare their system to have the infrastructure will only help. I mean, because it's not as if there aren't already refugee issues with Rwanda. So in that sense, it helps. But I think, sending the Home Secretary there with the press conference, this is to reinforce Boris Johnson's message on immigration. It's less about helping the Rwandan people, and I think even less about really dealing with asylum seekers in the UK.
One other thing here that a lot of people are also worried about is the principle of not sending someone in flight to where he's running from, especially where there is an established, well-founded fear of persecution. Did you think that the UK government thought through this before actually making this decision?
I'm going to guess that they are definitely aware of that. But once again, I think this goes back to the first problem that I had was, as you mentioned, this is against international law to send someone back or send someone to a country where they may face threats when they're applying in your country for asylum. But once again, I think that the Boris Johnson's government, they're well aware of it, but they've decided that this is the best way to put out a strong message that unfortunately miscategorizes refugees and asylum seekers in the UK.
The categorization is also very important here, which some also worried about, that there just might be some profiling. How well you know that these people should go to Rwanda? Is it on account of color? Now talking about race. What does this mean to others who may be seeking asylum in the UK?
I think 2 points about that. One is, I just want to say that as we deal with as the world watches and deals with the crisis in the Ukraine, and we've seen the millions of refugees that have left there, who have been welcomed by European countries, and including in the UK, I want to see that same energy when there are Black and brown refugees and migrants, just in general, not just in this particular situation. But then the second point is about the stigma. Imagine that once this goes in place, and let's say before anybody actually ever gets shipped to Rwanda, what does that do to the people who are Black and brown in the UK, who may even be there legally, who may be British citizens? It's going to increase the stigma that if you don't look like you should be here, we have a plan to send you 4,000 miles away, which is one of the many reasons why I think this is a very wrong-headed policy.
So, Calvin, in other words, there's every possibility this may lead to a new trend which may be dangerous to the world.
Exactly, and as we also saw in this, the kind of career civil servant staff of the home office in the UK, they had to say, we don't have any statistics to back this up. We don't have any statistics that, regardless of what you think of the plan, that it will actually deter people smuggling and other forms of illegal migration. So even the people charged with writing out the policies to see how it would work obviously recognize that there's no data to say that this would even work or this is even something plausible. But it does work for messaging if you want to portray yourself as being against migrants and wanting to show people you're serious about just shuffling them away, regardless of where they're from or what their situation is.
Looking at the history of Rwanda and how it came out of civil war, some are in shock to see that this is a point, of collection or reception for people that will be so repatriated. Some of these asylum seekers are in the UK to have a shot at a better life, and there are clear differences in the quality of opportunities both countries present. So, Calvin, what does Rwanda really stand to gain from the British government?
Well, I would imagine that there are probably gains that they could get from the British government that we may not really know now, that may not be apparent, because let's be real. In 2022, I'm sure that this happened after some negotiations behind the scenes of what Rwanda could get from the British government, from Boris Johnson's government. So I think that's one of the things in play. Also, like I said, it's money. If these immigrants do come, there's money. I think it's even per immigrant, in addition to the kind of like flat fee to do training programs and to help them resettle there. So in that sense, it provides revenue for Rwanda. But I think it also makes things difficult for Rwanda's neighbors, who it expressly said they did not prefer that they be migrants to come to Rwanda. So there are probably benefits we're not aware of for Rwanda, but I think in the long term, it's worse for Rwanda as well.
Let's bring the issue of priorities here. You mentioned Ukraine a while ago. Now, looking at the decision which is coming on the back of the recent influx of Ukrainian asylum seekers in Britain, is it possible that this move indicates the priorities of the UK?
Yes, and as I said, there's definitely a racial element to it, because some people in the UK believe that Ukrainians could look English. Never mind the people that may have had family in the UK for a generation or two who may be black and brown. So I think that this is, once again, and we see this across Europe, even here in my country, is painting immigrants and migration and asylum seekers, particularly when they are non-white, as plague on the country, as zapping resources, increasing crime, all of these kind of stereotypes. And I think that's what this feeds into, while they're welcoming people who they think can better assimilate in the UK, like the Ukrainians, or so we're made to believe by the Boris Johnson government.
Some analysts like yourself are already thinking that the dangers of setting up more refugee routes in other nations will, spring up because of this particular move, especially if these asylum seekers run away. Now, quickly here, how can this decision affect other countries, especially on the continent, Africa?
Well, I think that, what the UK is trying to do is not the first time. Australia had similarly intended program, I think, more than 20 years ago. Other countries have thought about it. Israel's tried to do the same thing. So I think what this says for African countries on the continent is they're going to be, if this was to happen, they're going to be countries that are going to be looking to African countries to set up similar deals. Also, it's going to create tension among African countries when it comes to the flow of migrants, to and from Rwanda and other places. So I think that's something in the long term that we have to watch out for as well.
Going back in time, Rwanda received evacuees from Afghanistan in agreement with the U.S. government in the middle of the problems with the Taliban. Does it look like Rwanda is placing itself strategically for benefits from the West?
Yes, it could be. And, there were also similar issues here in the United States that involved other West African countries where, we had Guantanamo former prisoners. I think this does set up Rwanda as basically saying that they want to increase cooperation with Western countries in this manner. But I don't think that it's going to be a long-term benefit. I actually think it will be disadvantageous for them in the long run.
Should the continent also be looking at some of the main causes, because it would seem as if some of the, or the bulk, percentage of these people that will be repatriated are actually Africans. So shouldn't this also worry the leaders of the continent on looking inwards on how to better the continent and see if that will reduce people, taking flight?
I think that is a more constructive way to deal with the migration issue. For example, to think about what are the factors that are causing people from the African continent, for example, to try to flee to Europe and the UK. And instead of, entering into partnerships like between Rwanda and the UK to house these migrants that are shipped 4,000 miles, why not develop those partnerships to spend that money in those areas that might change the quality of life for people in the African continent to reduce the need for them to go and seek better lives and more opportunities in Europe. So I think that would be a more right-headed policy that benefits everyone.
We'll come back really to talk more about what the continent should do to actually work on such policies. But again, the Rwandan Foreign Affairs Minister Vincent Biruta said that they'd prefer not to receive asylum seekers from the DRC, Burundi, Tanzania, and their other African neighbors. That's amazing. So how does this sit with you?
I think it's unfortunate, and I also think because my first thought before I had seen that quote was, well, is Rwanda opening itself up for just migrants from everywhere if they can come from the UK? And then of course I saw that, and what that says to me is that one, I don't think they're really going to expect a large number of immigrants to come from the UK through this plan. I think it's once again a publicity stunt to reinforce Boris Johnson's government's messaging. But I also think it says something, like very disheartening to Rwanda's neighbors. I think if Rwanda is going to say we're serious about tackling migration issues around the world, you can't say that and then say, but we don't need more refugees from around where we are. But we would like to get potentially those same refugees who go to UK and then come back from Rwanda. It doesn't even make any practical sense.
And well, joining us, I'll take a moment, I'll come back to you, Calvin, and I have someone who's joining us, Sulaiman Okoduwa. He's joining me over the phone. He's the Executive Director, Initiative for Youth Awareness on Migration, Immigration Development, and Reintegration. Sulaiman, good to have you on the program, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Good evening.
And quickly here, Calvin and I, we've been trying to, put our fingers on some of the, implications of what this move by the British government will mean. But first of all, you have a personal experience with migration, living one part of the country in Nigeria, specifically Edo State in southern Nigeria, to Europe. Let us in on first why people, take such flight from such African countries like Nigeria.
Please come again.
We're trying to look at the main reasons people, take such routes to get to Europe.
Okay. The reason why people are leaving this country is because of desperation of the economic hardship that is afflicting our Nigerian people, occasioned by the government of Nigeria. Now, people are living not only in search of greener pasture, but because of security and safety of their life. As it stands now, people in Nigeria are no longer in sedition. They don't sleep with their two eyes closed across this geopolitical zone. That alone can drag people out of the country to where they see they have security. In terms of life, and this is a power generation, people live by the people, they say that life is life. People want to go to a country where there is constant electricity that will improve their business, in the various countries they are going to. So this is a migration, as it starts now, is evolving. And it's evolving in the sense that it used to be in search of greener pastures. It used to be let me go abroad and see how I can transform my life and come back to develop my country. But now it has become, let me go there to seek a refuge, to have an abode, to have a place where I will call my home, where I have people that can guarantee the safety and security of my entire life. That is what it starts now. The truth be told, Nigeria today, Nigeria today is not, if go to Kaduna, go to, no state in Nigeria, as we speak, that is safe. And we have a president, a general, and the commander-in-chief of the armed forces of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, and is not doing anything with regards to the security challenges Nigeria is facing. That alone is is driving people out of the country to where they can feel secure and feel safe wherever they can go to.
And quickly, Solomon, because Calvin again and I, we were trying to see the main reasons these people don't leave one part of Africa to another part of Africa. They leave the continent entirely. Does this mean the continent isn't doing well?
Africa continent used to be the best continent. During the time, there was a meeting the late Muammar Gaddafi held in Rabat, 1990, because in Rabat 36. The meeting was held in Rabat in Morocco. Rabat 36. That meeting, Obasanjo was in the meeting, including all other African leaders, where they decided at that time that let them have Africa back, let them have African farm, let them have African trade, let them have African, everything. That's one currency that we unify the whole Africa country. And I remember at that meeting, the man said he is going to be half of the money that the rest African countries should provide half, just to ensure that the unity of African country, is sustained, and Africa will be one in that place. Because of politics, some people were thinking that this man, because he has not stayed a longer time in that place, he wants to become king in that place. He wants to be lord over everybody. They diverted their attention from that place. They conspired against with the West, and they also the man and killed him. That was so. Africa, as we speak now, they are not united, but we pray for the unity of Africa, because the unity of Africa will give African strength. It will bring us together. It will guarantee that is the prosperity of the land of Africa, especially the sub-Saharan African. So, as we speak now, Africa, if we say the Africa is united, we are just speaking African unity in water, because one, we have this Francophone country who believe, as we speak now, that they belong to the French colony. And we also have the West African country who also believe that, yes, they are the British colony. So this division is among African people is still among things that is dividing the continent against, where we are coming from and where we ought to be. So these are the facts we need to put on the table and see how we can, strengthen the unity of Africa. If we must unite, if we must talk about unity, togetherness, and that will drive prosperity in the African continent, we must look at our diversity. What are the things that these people? What are the things that is dividing us? What are the things that we need to do together to have one focus, to have one idea, to have one that will bring people from the Cameroon, the people from the Ivorians, the people from
Let me jump in here, Solomon, quickly. As we speak, some experts say every moment of the day in Nigeria, there is a family working to see that a member of that family leaves the country. How dangerous is this, a decision for anyone to take flight out of Nigeria to Europe?
Yes, taking flight out of Nigeria to Europe is not very easy. It's not as easy as it used to be, because the processes involved in visa processing as we speak now is cumbersome. The embassy, the gateway, which are the embassies, especially the European embassies, don't allow them, even though most of the Nigerians who qualify for visa, but there was a time we said, okay, the government of Nigeria is not saying nobody should travel. What we are saying is, if you want to travel, travel in a more respectful way. If you want to travel, travel in a more dignified way, so that when you go to that country, you will become an ambassador of your state, ambassador of your country in that particular country that is hosting you. Now, we introduce the program. Most of the embassies are even though these people qualified, they have a lot of money in their account, the embassy declined them. So these are the factors that is fueling irregular migration, because people want to see what is the reason why these people don't want me in their country. When I'm qualified, I'm a businessman, I have money in my account, I don't want to spend more than 1 month. They are going there to come back. So yes, let's say they decline their visa. I don't know, for whatever reason, I don't know. You understand? So these are the reasons So if we must continue to encourage our people to travel regularly, the gateway, which are the embassies, must be put. The policy of migration with regards to foreign policy embassies must be put on notice. The Nigeria factor is that we know that yes, Nigerians who travel out of the country, most of them don't like to come back. But there are also people who place premium on their business in Nigeria, who place premium on their families, who place premium on their personal reputation, that wouldn't like to go to that country and start seeking asylum. They should put those people into proper consideration.
And before we go on break, about 4 years ago, I met you at the airport with members of the IOM to receive some Nigerians that were brought back into the country. And there we spoke to some of these people. Some were not too happy to be back, and some, had, bitter tales of what they went through. Is it a good thing, the decision of the UK to bring back some of these people, as we had seen 4 years ago in Nigeria, back to Rwanda?
Honestly, it's going to be a very disastrous adventure if they decide to bring people from UK to Rwanda. Remember what most of the things that packed up the crisis in Libya was because of the mercenary that was brought in from other African countries that fought that kind of infiltrated the Libyan authorities and the Libyan people. So Africa today, some major part of Africa are facing security challenges occasioned by people that are hungry, people that are desperate, people who are who feel rejected, that they want one or two ways they feel they're angry with the government. Now, if you bring people from UK now back to the economy that has not been improved, no matter how you coerce them that they are going to be reintegrated, because when you see people that came back 4 years ago, 5 years ago, nothing happened. I know people that came 2000 to year 2000. The first deportation that happened in Libya in 2000. Most of them are aged now, but nothing happened to them. So there are several references that you can refer to, that if you tell them that they are coming to their country, their host country, yes, they are supposed to be happy that they are coming to their host country. But what becomes of them? How will their life be when they come back? Will the government accept them? Will they be fully reintegrated? What are the plans for the government to put them in the right footing? That these people will now be those that will help them to preach the message against what they are trying to do. Because we should focus on curative measure instead of preventive measure at this time. We know what has happened in the past. People that came from Libya 2016, 2017, as we speak, most of them has returned back to the mix where they vow never to go. When you see them at the airport, you see them putting their head down to the ground, saying, "God, thank you for bringing me back. I will never go to that country. I will never go to that country." But 3 months after that day, you see them going back to that country. Say, both of them said, "I'd rather die in that country than die in Nigeria." So it's as bad as that.
Well, Calvin, we'll take a moment. I think listening to Sulaiman is one of those who once left Nigeria, and he's been back to Nigeria and trying to see how he can work to rehabilitate those who have actually returned. A bit of, stories of some who never made it. But again, when we come back, we need to talk more about some of the key things. Just as we highlighted, Africa needs to look inwards and actually fix the continent and see how a lot of people can, go around the countries on the continent. And if you have to go to Europe, according to Sulaiman, do it in a very legal way. That's when we return here on VSA. Join us again. Well, our home run here on Village Square Africa on News Central Television broadcasts into 54 African countries and beyond. And we're looking at the new move by the British government to move some refugees or undocumented people to Rwanda. Now, the proposal of the British government isn't just facing a backlash, it's also waiting on the decision by the Parliament to pass a law currently considered. Now, the law seeks to criminalize any refugee entering the UK without a valid visa. Some of the concerns raised is the quality of life these asylum seekers will get in Rwanda. With many having benefited from asylum programs in the past and having their lives face a turnaround, the UK government's move is seen as a violation of its humanitarian responsibilities. Those fleeing Iraq, Syria, Eritrea, Sudan will most likely be transported to Rwanda now. Now, the Central African country is one of Africa's most stable states, but also holds the risk of the unknown. So with me here to talk about this is Calvin Dak and Sulaiman Okoduwa. Calvin, before the break, we're trying to look at some of the key things there, but again, looking at the UK, it seems to be looking after itself. Is it breaking any international law with this mooted idea?
Yes, because one of the things and the kind of terminology that we use that I think is important is there really isn't an illegal asylum seeker as they are painting them. One of the things that is happening in the UK, it happened here in the US under President Trump, is the legal points of applying for asylum when you get to a country's borders or wherever that's set up were closed. And then there weren't options at, say, the embassy, the consulate, be it the UK or United States, to apply for asylum. So it was really hypocritical. I think this call is as well for the UK to not fulfill its responsibilities under international law to vet and approve or disapprove the asylum seeker's application, but also that they're not adequately providing ways for people to do this legally so they can apply for asylum or refugee status or whatever it is. And so I think that if the UK focused more on making it easier for someone to pursue it legally, then I would take it seriously that they are really trying to regularize migration. But I think they're just trying to categorize immigrants and migrants that look a certain way as the cause of a country's ills and not something to be welcomed.
Talking about the country's ills, are these some of the effects of Brexit, which many have said was poorly planned?
Yes, and earlier we were talking about, when I said I thought this was in part a stunt and, in part to reinforce Boris Johnson's messaging. Well, because of Brexit, I think that this is something that the crowd that supported Brexit because they didn't feel that being tied to the European Union's guidelines and rules for migration fit what they wanted in the UK. This feeds right into that messaging. So even if it doesn't take place, you got people now who supported Brexit in the UK thinking, okay, this is why we supported it, because now we don't have to wait for the rest of Europe to come up with a solution. We're going to come up with one on our own. Unfortunately, I think the solution that the government came up with in the UK is wrong-headed.
Sulaiman, let's come to you because this will better prepare us before we wind down to talk more how we can fix the continent. Help us here, Sulaiman. What are those incentives, or what are those catch that would make an African jump on a balloon, on the high sea to make it to Europe?
Yeah, the things that people think that will make them to go to Europe, like I said earlier, if I answer the question correctly, is because they want to improve their lives. It's because they want to live a better life. And if they find a better life in Germany, in Holland, in Italy, in UK, good for them. But the idea is they should do it the right way. They should do it in such a way that they will not be humiliated, repatriated, or embarrassed in the country. They should add to the economy of the country that they will build that listen and that they find themselves. So
and Solomon, sorry to butt in here. And your state, Edo State in Nigeria, has also suffered a whole lot, of casualties from this flight. Talking about the right way, there are a lot of people who are in this business as transporters taking people to Europe. And it has been so found that these people, many of them, have not even stepped foot outside Nigeria. So how is this business, flourishing for people who don't even know a thing about where they're transporting people to?
Yeah, people, there is people that are good. There is the smugglers. We have the smugglers, we have the traffickers. So is a network of a canvasser, of a recruiter, of a trafficker, and to the receiving end in Europe. Now, most of these people that they are recruiting are not from the urban area. They are from the rural sector. And because of the rural-urban migration that is populating the city of Benin, so people in the Benin want to decongest their cities in the city, and it's okay, let me go to where I will have ease doing my business, according to what the story they were told. For example, somebody coming from Akoko Edo, coming to Benin. He got to Benin and he saw a beautiful city. He saw a city that is full of life and all of that. And he saw a place where everything seems to be good. And somebody said, okay, this is just the tip of the iceberg. I will take you to Europe, where you will have all of these things and at will. This is how much you are going to pay me when you get there. Don't worry how I'm going to do it, but when you get there, tell me you are going to pay me XYZ. And the woman agreed that as soon as I get there, I'm going to pay you XYZ. The agreement is still in this place. Now, the trafficker now succeed in convincing that person. And they go to Lagos and prepare this and kind of arrange all whatever document for the victim, and the person they fly the person down to Europe. They got it there and it's okay that from today you are going to pay us 35 to 40,000 euros in this place. The first time in that place, we think that she's going to pay 35,000 to 40,000 euros as equivalent to 40,000 in Nigeria, not knowing that euro and naira are totally different for a currency. So this is what issue came from, because when they now convert arranging the euro, sending euro to Nigeria, realizing the equivalent of the money she is going to pay, the parents in Nigeria will be pressuring the young girl that you left Nigeria since last year, you're not giving us 1 naira, and we are aware that you are paying 40,000 euros. So this is where problem comes from. Now, what I said earlier, the driving of this arrangement is economy. They want to see how they will improve the life of their life and the life of their family. They want to see how they will go back to Nigeria and see how they can set up a business for themselves and their family because of what they see in others. For example, today you have 100 euros about 65 to 7,000 naira. So we have $1,000, €1,000, you are talking about 650,000 to 630,000 naira. Plenty money.
So Solomon, before I go to Calvin, quickly here, again, apologies button in. You once worked with the government of your state advising on how to reduce those going outside the country. Let us in on some of the things the government is doing even while you're out of office. Is the government working to see that a lot of these young, vibrant African youth, don't jump on a balloon to make it to Europe?
Yeah, what the government was doing during my time in government was to conscientize, to sensitize those youth on the danger of regular migration and human trafficking. Right? So, even when I left office, the structure is still there for the government to canvass. And my advice is to the government to create a sustainable means of livelihood for potential migrants so that they will see opportunities in this place. And also for government to continue to harness the potential of Nigerian youth, that's Edo youth, who will be potential victims of migration or victims of human trafficking, to see their potential in Nigeria here, because the grass is greener where you water the land. If you don't have the skills, you can't, even when you get to America, you will not make it there. You don't have skills, you don't have good jobs, you don't build up capacity in this place. If you like, whatever you are going to, you're going to become liability. You understand? So that is what we are asking them to become in this place. The government is not resting as we speak on its own to ensure that the people of this state are not no longer victims that will be smuggled out of the country instead of greater power. And I thank God that the Oba of Benin, His Royal Majesty of Bonobane Doko Apolopolo, has also weighed in with a strong worded, proclamation that no one from the Benin will be trafficked again. As is there, the whole native who have been involved in this business have been stopped. And they retract their steps. And most of the victims that were from Benin at that time stopped payment because of Oba Benin weighed in. And that was a very big bank. So the governor of Edo State will also use the opportunity to encourage him to continue the advocacy, because people need to be hearing. There is a need for them to set up anti-human trafficking club in every secondary school, because these young students, they are the potential victims because of this incentives my dams or the traffickers came to show them wherever they come to Nigeria. We are still in Easter holiday. A lot of people are in Nigeria now who came to scout for victims. So they came, they are still around now. Most of you think that they don't come to celebrate Christmas and Easter with their family. When they come to spend $1,000, they are trying to recoup that $1,000 with a victim that will pay them the money back.
All right, okay. Solomon, I'll come back to you. A good thing that the government in your side of the country, Nigeria, is working to see that there is a reduction. Quickly here, Calvin, the UK seems focused on the mode of arrival of these refugees and not the threats they face, where they're coming from. Now, it brings us to the United Nations. How can the UN intercede in this issue?
Well, I think that point you made is very important, because notice in all of this discussion, we heard a lot from Boris Johnson and from the Home Secretary about, the way that immigrants were coming in, how dangerous it was. I believe at the end of last year, an unfortunate incident, I think it's 27 immigrants, were killed when they were going through that. What we don't hear is why. And that's I think is an important thing. What I don't hear from the UK government is an acknowledgement that regardless of how these migrants want to get to the UK, they're not doing it because they want a vacation. They're not doing it because they want to be illegal. They're not doing it because they don't have anything better to do. The UK needs to recognize that the situation where these refugees come from must be so dire that they would take these risks. And I think if they focused on that, there will be less stigma about what these immigrants are going to the UK and other places to do. Now, when it comes to the United Nations, one of the things that I was very pleased at was that the United Nations is speaking against this, mostly from the perspective of the UK's obligations under international law, but also human rights issues in Rwanda. What I would like to see more of, particularly in the Security Council, is a complete denunciation of this type of practice for the many reasons why it doesn't help migration issues and definitely doesn't help those seeking asylum and seeking safer, better, more economically secure lives.
And Calvin, I think this is coming at a time where this awareness is gaining traction. Only recently, the WHO DG, Dr. Tedros, did say that there hasn't been a fraction of the kind of attention he's seen in Ukraine. If that was given to the Tigrayans during the crisis, then that would have meant something different. For the WHO chief to also weigh in his concern on this, as we're discussing here, tells us a very worrying, development. It doesn't mean that the world's attention is now getting to what we're discussing now.
I don't think the world attention is getting closer where it should be on these issues. What I do think is happening is that we know for sure when a crisis happens, European nations and the United States and other countries, they can do something. Had the Ukrainian crisis not happened, no one would have even thought it plausible for these countries to accept this number of Ukrainian immigrants. And like I said, that is a crisis in Ukraine, and I think that those refugees should be treated fairly and should be able to seek security. I have no problem with that. But my issue is like you were saying, we didn't have the same energy when it wasn't coming from Europe or the Eurasian continent. The other thing about this, when you talk about the WHO, is we're never going to solve a solution if we only throw money or throw efforts at the result of the problem. And I think that's what the UK is doing, as they're thinking, okay, here's how we're going to deal with the refugees who are coming across the channel, in their words, illegally. Instead of thinking about, well, how can we help from health, economics, politics, human rights? How can we help countries dealing with those issues now so that they don't become issues where the UN, the WHO, and others have to come out and decry a measure that doesn't help migration and that puts those who are trying to seek asylum in worse physical, mental, economic, political shape.
And Calvin, African affairs is also your area of forte, and perhaps let's start talking about solutions. What can the continent do to reverse and, if not stop, the trend of its youthful population immigrating to Europe and America?
I think what it will require is the resources and the attention on the causes of why people are leaving. Because it seems like now, when there is attention paid and when there are resources that are expended, it's usually to deal with the aftermath of it. I was in Morocco just a few weeks ago, and as you know, Morocco is one of those countries where a lot of immigrants from sub-Saharan Africa go to Morocco to try to get to Europe. Many of them stay, and Morocco has done a really good job in trying to acclimate sub-Saharan African immigrants, particularly in the fields of education, and contributing to their neighbors so that those push and pull factors for migration are addressed before they become issues. So I think that's something that African countries could work together better on. And frankly, if they're going to go to countries like the UK and other Western powers and get money for, say, this kind of a migration problem, how about ask for that type of assistance to deal with those factors that cause migration? So maybe in 10, 15 years, we won't have this problem like we're seeing today.
I'll come back to you, Calvin, so that we can close the show. Let's quickly take the closing comments from Sulaiman. Sulaiman, we're talking about solutions. What are those things that you think Nigeria or any other African country should be looking to doing now to stop the trend of its people moving out to Europe and other parts of the world?
Yeah, listen, African has there's a structure that will give people a kind of comparison of how if they're to live or not to live. Like one of my presentations I told them in Europe, after every year the European Union gave Libyan government and Moroccan government 2 billion euros to secure the Mediterranean. And I told them, this money over the years I don't use that for the desired results. Why don't you use part of this money to build infrastructure in the sub-Saharan Africa, especially the most endemic country that is into this migration. And we have it on record, according to data, that Edo State in Nigeria is one of the most, this is the epicenter of this migration and trafficking in Nigeria. And I told them, so if they must find a longer lasting solution to this irregular migration and human trafficking in sub-Saharan Africa and all African countries, there must be an infrastructure in all these endemic states and countries that is not affected by these migration challenges. So in Nigeria, we can there is a need for them to invest in agriculture. There's a need for them to invest in this capacity building and empowerment program. Instead of giving the money to people that will not give them the desired result. Because over the years, people are still traveling through the Mediterranean Sea. Even when 2 billion euros is being slung into the corridor of the Mediterranean border, people still travel because it's a conspiracy by the authority in that place. 5 boats will move, 3 boats will enter, and 2 boats will be apprehended in the high sea. Just to justify this money they collected from the European Union. That is what they are doing. So I'm telling them today, if we must have a long-lasting solution to the migration challenges in Africa, there must be a need, a concerted effort by European Union, the Italian government, and Nigerian government to look at establish infrastructure, something that people will see as, oh, instead of me going to Europe, why don't I belong to this place? This is what I wanted to do.
Okay, Sulaiman.
We have vast hectares of arable land that can be used for agricultural program for youth who would like to be, who will potential migrants. Let them deploy these resources into that sector. You will see that in the long time, 2 to 3 years, people would like to travel.
All right, okay, Sulaiman, I think that's a fine place for us to go to Calvin to give us his closing moments. Calvin, listening to Sulaiman talking about the EU brings into focus the AU. How can the AU weigh in on this?
Well, I think it would be very advantageous for African countries if the AU could come up with a continent-wide policy on one dealing with factors that contribute to migration, but also maybe to come up with, a kind of shared policy of how to deal with Europe and the US when it comes to migration. Set standards as to what they expect from Europe, and Europe can set standards about what they expect for African countries to address the issue of migration. But once again, the African Union can do this, but there has to be political will behind the African Union and the European Union to really address the root causes, or else we're just coming up with solutions that may fire up one's base about their feelings on migration, but won't actually solve the problem or help the plight of refugees and migrants on the continent of Africa and those coming to Europe.
A fine place for us to say many thanks for being such nice company, Calvin Dak and Sulaiman Okoduwa. And thanks for listening to us across the continent and beyond. I'm Sulaiman. I'll be back again tomorrow. See you.